nice lighting.
No, the lighting's fine. The lighting's fine. The phone will pick up everything.
The lighting is about f8 at 60th with ASA 100, so it's more than adequate.
What have you decided on a certain color temperature? Or
Yeah, it's they're Chroma 50s. CRI of about. I try to get the 93s, but you can't always get them. But they're way up there. They're somewhere in the high 80s at least.
There's Tom had not Jerry. Yeah, Jerry. I can think his last name right now on about 20 shows ago, and he was talking about lighting. He's his day job here. Use him. He does use him displays, and it's a fascinating discussion because he's talking about different light colors and what works well from auto railroading. He was recommending a fairly low temperature.
Another guy who is very good at that is Phil Manette. He was the immediate past president. Phil's a theater lighting designer. It's his profession, and so he's also got all kinds of useful and interesting techniques. So this is Milpitas, which is probably the least completed part of the layout, but
Good place to start.
but, you can see we're putting. This is just like last week's work. We built these little crossings, just styrene. It's a couple of thicknesses of 16-inch, and it's just been shaped a little bit, and it'll be painted, kind of to look like a gravel road. Probably use some craft paint with a little bit of ballast mixed in, and then we'll be, filling in the ground cover and ballasting. But I like to get the road in first so that I don't end up having to lay the road over ballast or ground cover that's already in place, and then the ground cover, and then the ballast, so it looks like the ballast is spilling over the earth, not the other way around.
You got the feel of Milpitas, haven't you? Just with the hills in the backdrop.
Does it? Yeah, the photo backdrop definitely whacks you over the head. If you've ever been in the South Bay, it's like, I know that.
Certainly, certainly.
Now, are these photos you've taken and strung together? Or?
Yeah, I went on to, actually not very far from where we are. If you went on 237, about 2 exits east, Lafayette Street goes all the way out to the old Milpitas Marina, and it's a park, and you can walk out on the levee about a mile, and you get a nice unobstructed view of Mission Peak and Mount Allison. And all the way down there, you can see to Mount Hamilton. You can see the domes, and I just hiked out there with my Canon SLR and a tripod, and took about 20 exposures, and then I just used the stitch feature in Photoshop to.
And you've got the map here too, so we're starting down here.
Yeah.
Milpitas, yeah.
So
Milpitas.
what's your, so you have 1x4, 1x3s?
Yeah, this is basically bench work right out of Lynn Westcott's book. But I'm not even being clever about it. It's just supporting a hollow core door, which I wouldn't do again. Hollow core door is okay up to about probably 28 inches. The 36-inch was, it works scenically for what I want to do here, but they're not that rigid, and it probably would have been better to do it with 5/8 ply, honestly. But, we're all always trying to find lighter, better, simpler building materials, and hollow core door is an interesting composite shape, but it has a tendency to warp if it gets too wide. So there's a lot of, if you look under here, you'll actually find a little bit of slotted angle, 2-inch slotted angle running all the way across, and it's a girder, and it was just a cord deep enough to prevent the sucker from warping. If I'd been clever and built the fascia as an integrated box when I started, I might not have had to do that, because that certainly stiffened things up a lot.
Yeah.
But it didn't occur to me at the time, I have to admit. And then later I sort of had an aha moment.
So these are going to be, are these the switch?
These control the power switches, right? So where there's a mainline, well, this one actually controls the A station in the back. Well, you go through the mouse hole here, and there's a siding where the commuter train, the Ace train, can park. The others are all aligned with power switches, you can tell.
So it's just a small, just a small electrical switch. Huh?
Yeah, and then that actually is connected to a bunch of S-minis that read the inputs, and then the computer actually throws the switch, because these are mainline turnouts, they belong to the dispatcher. The yard turnouts are just slide switches with little linkages. And they're mostly Picos, but this one's a Fast Tracks, actually, made with Ted's Fast Track jigs. We'll be visiting its homeland. And gotta say, if I were to do this again, Fast Tracks was not available when I did this, and I was really in a quandary. I was going very slowly. I was hand building switches, and they were getting better, but it was taking me 2 or 3 hours a piece to do them. And the critical ones, it seemed like my friends who were better than me were always having to come by and tweak them into really working. And it was slow and frustrating. And then Pico came out with a Code 83 North American outline switches. And here was a switch that, while a little bit expensive, it looked good and it worked. It just works out of the box. The only thing I needed to do was cut the jumpers to change it from power fed to live frog. Very easy. Took about 10 minutes. And at that point, we were really rocking and rolling. Now, I just built the switch over there because Ted was telling me how great they were. And said, yeah, come over and build one. And it was amazing. I built the first one, the first Fast Tracks turnout I ever built in about an hour and a half end to end. Took it home, and it was perfect. And I think the longest thing was that Ted and his buddy Ray were telling me, oh, you need to gap them real close. And I was thinking, no, I need to gap them real far back where the filing point is. And they, you can't do that. And I said, sure I can. I'll just leave some extra rail on the back.
Yeah, so that's why it was, because, the Fast Track jig has used gap about here and here, right?
Yeah, and as you can see, we're gapped about here and here. Well, I gap them at the filing point.
That makes sense.
It just sort of idiot-proofs them a little. There'll always be a bigger idiot, but you can at least remove that problem. So
you'll die right here, which is, so you won't foul at that point.
yeah, exactly. So you stop here at the fouling point. You can't move into the switch, and you can't foul it while you're trying to figure out what happened, which is even better. Oh yeah, well, a decent single. That's a whole other dissertation. Is expensive. Now that is a dummy because BLMA has not made the right single unless you want to do this, which is taking a BLMA head and then fabricate one and all this. And actually, with the 3D printing, that's not an unreasonable thing to do. And I may end up doing it if Craig Martin doesn't, in fact, come through with the WP SP style ladders and no platform version of the Union Switch and Signal H2A. Single, but this one, well, long story. I built a couple of them, and it's just a lot of work. And so he's supposed to come out. So in the meantime, I went over to Michael's, bought a couple of jewels here for I think $275 for 75 of them, or something like that. But basically, what, a nickel a piece, something on that order, and some bamboo skewers, the utility infielder of Model Railroad, and a little silver paint, and then there are repeaters up there, which actually give you the indication that's connected to the signal system. And so that has a couple of benefits. One, you don't need to wait for BLMA. Two, it's fairly inexpensive. It's $25 for each one of those boxes, which represents.
So this is a CD element.
Yeah. Eventually it will be replaced, and there's a couple of places down on the layout where they're close enough together that it's confusing. And on those, I do have working signal.